What's going on, everyone? So, it is official. Juan Nunez has officially signed with Barcelona. He is going to play next season in Barcelona. This, I'm sure, to many of you comes as no surprise, but I know a lot of you wanted me to continue to provide the updates and kind of the pathway for what is going to happen. Now, this is something that, there was thoughts of like, oh, maybe the Spurs would kind of bring him in. Maybe the Spurs would kind of buy him out. But it just doesn't make sense, especially now the way that the roster has shaped up. And to me, this is a bit disappointing because I just think he would have gotten so much experience and learned so much from Chris Paul. I think one of the best acquisitions that they could have made this offseason was the signing of Chris Paul. Right, what he's going to do for Stephon Castle and Devin Vassell and even Trey Jones. Right, could have done a lot of those same things for Juan Nunez. Right, and I think Nunez being looked at as that traditional playmaking point guard, the Ricky Rubio type. I just think that there's very few of those left in this league. And Chris Paul is one of the last of a dying breed in a lot of ways, and to an elite level, right? I mean, the win shares that he carries is insane, right? I mean, go look at just the win totals that every team he's been on won the year prior, and then the year he gets there. And I think he's going to have a tremendous impact with the San Antonio Spurs and what he's going to be able to do for the young guys as far as development goes, but also Victor Wembanyama and being able to really kind of set him up and establish him and kind of get him going and slot it in the proper positions and getting the basketball in his spots, right? Like, that's something that Chris Paul's really going to provide to Victor in particular. And I just think Juan Nunez, I think he's a guy that could have learned a lot from Chris Paul. Now, this doesn't mean that the Spurs can't bring Chris Paul back next year, right? But again, it's like the more years that you get playing alongside Chris Paul, the better. So I think that, in my opinion, is the biggest sort of, negative impact, right? Like, Juan Nunez is a guy that, I mean, regardless, he was going to be raw and need development. He was a guy that, more likely than not wasn't going to come in and start or maybe not even play heavy minutes. And the Spurs knew drafting him that more likely than not he's going to be a draft and stash guy for at least a year, right? So this was always the intentions going in. The Spurs, this didn't come out of left field for the Spurs. They knew this was a situation. But, then fast forward and you land Chris Paul and it's like, man, he would have been perfect as a mentor for Nunez. And I just think that, hopefully, the Spurs can kind of keep and entice Chris Paul. You may have to overpay him a little bit, year in and year out. But, that's fine. Again, look at what Chris Paul did for guys like SGA. I mean, SGA to this day talks about how he wouldn't be the player that he is without Chris Paul and how he still talks to Chris Paul and he still hangs out with Chris Paul and he still will go over to his house and work out with him and all that stuff because Chris Paul just has that history of really elevating guys and making the young guys better. But, as far as Juan Nunez goes, just as a player and what they'll eventually get, right? The idea is to develop him into that true point guard that can kind of get the Victor Wembanyama established and going, right? Kind of the same idea of what Chris Paul is going to provide for Victor this season. Right? You look at a Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle is probably closer to like an SGA type. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as an SGA. That would be great for the Spurs if that's the case. But he's more of that combo guard, hybrid guard more than he is that traditional playmaking can come in and kind of set the tone and really distribute the basketball. That's the idea with Nunez is that he's a guy that can come in and play that role. Play the role and even alongside Stephon Castle, right? Like Stephon Castle with his size, his athleticism, his versatility, you can slot him at the 2. You can start him at the point guard. You can put him at the 2, right? You could, even on some occasions, slot him at the 3 guard or the 3 spot, right? And so, it's not something to where, Nunez, where does he end up getting phased out? Or is he a guy that ends up, no, you can, of worst case, even if he is that backup point guard, right? Even if he is that guy that come in, like let's say say at best he's like a Tyus Jones type. Like that's still really good, right? Which is funny because they have Trey Jones, but Tyus he's just been better. He's just proven that he's one of, if not the best backup point guards in the league. Starting is the question for him, and that could potentially be the case with Juan Nunez, right? Like, is he ever able to make the strides as your starting point guard? But also, if that happens and you're the Spurs, you may end up having a problem on your hands, right? Because, like, what do you do? Like, even once Chris Paul and everybody fades out, right? Are you really going to go, like, Nunez, Vassell, Castle, and then whoever your four is, maybe Zohan or and then Wemby, right? Or maybe get a center at some point, right? I don't know about that. So, there almost is this argument of him just kind of being that traditional point guard. Also, the defensive side of things, right? He already has his struggles overseas on the defensive end. Does he continue to, is he able to adjust and make the changes as a defensive-minded two-way point guard on the Spurs? Right? Is he able to eventually become that, or does he become a guy that he's not very good on the defense side? Right? He can knock down the shot. He can facilitate and play make. Right? Cool. But you also want somebody that can defend. Right? So there's a lot of questions about his defense ability and his shooting ability. Right? I mean, there's a reason he was so late in the second round, and the Spurs were able to grab him. But he is a Spurs type of player, right? Spurs love the type of players that he is. I've seen a lot of people throw out he could be like the Ginobili type of player, and he can, right? He's a guy that I do think can come in off the bench, make some plays, hit some shots, get things going, right? If Castle goes to the bench, right, boom, you put him in the offense, keep rolling, right? Like that's the vision long term with the Spurs. That's the idea with the Spurs long term, is the idea to okay, we can put ourselves in this position to where now we can, be this deep, versatile, just playoff contention level team. And, I don't think it's terrible, him spending another year overseas and playing with Barcelona, allows him to kind of get more experience. And it is a major league, right? It's one of the better leagues outside of the NBA, right? So he gets to continue to play and perform and, kind of work on his game, work on his craft before making that transition to the NBA next season, right? And it's even if they do, the Spurs could potentially just kind of, hey, let's let him kind of develop over there. Or they could always trade the rights. There's a million things that the Spurs could end up doing, right? Especially because again, you still have Trey Jones, right? What if Trey starts taking some real strides alongside Chris Paul? Again, don't underestimate the value that Chris Paul brings and provides to young players and just their growth and development as young players, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Jones really starts taking some strides to where it's is it even worth bringing back Nunez? Or do we look to maybe, trade his rights or something elsewhere, right? So just things to keep in mind. But regardless, I do think, he get another year of experience, another year of development, playing the game. Then he can make the jump and the leap into the NBA with the Spurs and kind of see how that unfolds, see how that all plays out. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Are you disappointed that Juan Nunez officially signs with Barcelona? Do you think that, he, it's fine, let him stay over there, let him develop? Are you disappointed that, he's not going to get that's a year that he's not going to get to play with Chris Paul, right? Again, they could keep Chris Paul longer, but it's just, the more years that he could work with Chris Paul, the better. The more opportunity he has around Chris Paul and just growth and development, the better. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.